We are the Institute of Technology, we're the higher education institution actually that has the best percentage of male to female leaders and managers. We actually have more women leaders and managers than men, and we're quite unique in the higher education sector here because of that. And we're very proud of that.
And how do you think that informs the culture or the framework within which people engage with both technology and art, since it's even in your title?
Well, I think there's been a lot of discussion earlier about role models, and I think it's very important to have managers and leaders who are role models. My head of technology is a woman who's very involved in women in technology and science in Ireland and internationally. So there's already built-in role models for young women coming in. We do very positive action things, so we get women involved in development programs in the Aurora scheme to develop women managers. I'm involved in a number of women leaders networks myself, so we set examples and we provide training and support for women. But because of that approach that we're taking, which is putting design at the centre, we're introducing girls and women to technology through the visual arts, through design, and through something that we term cyber psychology. So whereas they might think, oh no, technology is not for me, that's male, that's about systems, that's about data, we're bringing them through a different path to get to it, and they're suddenly immersed in technology from a different perspective, and it seems very natural.
I find that interesting, that thing, well, it's male, it's about systems, it's about data. It's interesting that we have these kind of very clear, assigned, traditional roles we need to kind of break out of.
IBM was setting up a design centre in Ireland, and they were looking for 12 graduates to help them embed design in their technology. And I'm glad to say they took 10 out of the 12 from IADT. And the reason they did that was because we do exactly what you're saying. We bring together psychologists, technologists, people who are studying English, media and cultural studies, with designers, with visual artists. And we put them in a room and we say, take things apart, break it, literally take it apart, take the ideas apart, bring all of those diverse thoughts and ideas into the team, and then see what kind of design solutions you're coming up with. And I think, you know, what you were saying around the human-centered approach, when you're bringing psychologists in to work with engineers, there's a real kind of, what are they doing here? You know? But actually, after a little while, they realize that they're very important because they're telling them, how will people experience what you're designing? How will people experience using that technology? What is the human emotion around that? So I think bringing teams together that may not be naturally thought of as working together actually is very, very creative.
And so the humanities, arts, literature, music, history is no different from any other part of our lives now. We have fabulous projects all over the world where we're taking our cultural heritage, digitizing it and making it available. And so, for example, in Ireland, we're very lucky. The 1901 and 1911 census is online. Even putting that online is a massive undertaking. It's not just taking the digital images of the census, which is one part of it, but how do you model that? How do you then get it into some digital format, machine-readable format? How do you make it visible to users? How do you design the interface? How do you think people are going to use this? And now we have all that data in machine-readable form. We can do analytics on that. That was just not possible. Even the British administration, with all their administration, they did summaries, but now we have all the raw data. Imagine what we can understand about Ireland in 1911. We work very much in interdisciplinary teams, very similar. We have software engineers, designers, and then, of course, in our case, people who are historians, literary specialists. And it is a translation process. One of the things, we have a master's in digital humanities at Maynooth University, and not all, but about 80% of the students come from a humanities background. And one of the hardest and most interesting things that we need to teach them is what I say is maybe thinking like a computer. We don't teach our humanities students to think in terms of modeling data. We teach them to think of literature, novels, poetry. But then when I say, okay, here's a poem, how do we model it? How do we model it so we can represent it computationally? A lot of them find this very difficult. But once they get over that hump, then this whole vista opens up to them. Now I understand how to model things like historical records, literature, art, so that it can be represented, so it can be data mined, so we can do things with it that we can't do when it's in an analog form.
And what are the, this is something you might be able to respond to, Kathryn, what are the key challenges around maintaining a dynamic within a team? You know, when there are those differences, points of view, or if we look at science traditionally is a very empirical methodology, whereas there's greater subjectivity in others. How do you find that common ground, or what are the challenges you've faced?
Well, it's actually very useful to get people in with a fresh approach, because the people, technologists have been working in an area, they understand it deeply, but sometimes what they're not very good at is communicating that out. So if you are actually acting as a designer, what you're doing is combining an understanding of the language of the technology, and you need to know enough that you can talk well with your technologists, but you're trying to bring in the user's needs and their goals as well, and they may not be technologists at all. And you're also trying to combine in the business goals as well. So you end quite a lot as a translator. So in that role, you're trying to understand the technology constraints, but pass that message on to your users in a way that they can consume, and make the experience as best as you can for that. And therefore, sometimes actually going in and questioning things that other people assume or believe everybody knows is like, well, are your users going to understand this? What level of information do they want to come in at? And yes, thinking in their language, because often we use acronyms and technical terms. We're embedded in an industry that are completely ununderstood outside from that. So I actually think having people jump in with without deep knowledge can be good, as long as you can act as enough of a translator between those different groups.
And do you ever find just that there's a tension within that, where people want to jump straight to the solution?
There is,
sell
yes.
their solution and then basically defend it to the hilt?
Yeah, so when we go into companies, quite often they'll start off going, right, we're going to do this, and this, and we sort of, if we were doing workshops, we'd say, well, let's just go back and tell us who your users are, what their goals are, and what their problems are. And it's interesting, actually, that whole approach and the way design is brought into industry now. The business world has really embraced it. And so if you look at things like lean startup, etc., everybody now starts with what is the customer experience that we want to create. And that's got a much higher profile throughout the whole tech industry, is really starting from what's the problem? Is it a problem worth solving? And what pain are we actually going to try and take away? So that not everything is technology-led. It's more technology is an enabler. But we need to actually be thinking about this experience, and thinking about this experience holistically, not just in maybe how you're actually interfacing with a device, but what is the context it's being used within, and what is our responsibility in actually creating this as well.